The morning mist hung low over the ancient stone walls of Kensington Palace as maintenance worker Thomas Mitchell descended into the basement levels, his footsteps echoing through corridors that had witnessed centuries of royal secrets. What he discovered that Tuesday morning in March would shake the very foundations of the British monarchy and expose a web of surveillance that reached into the highest echelons of power. Thomas had been working at the palace for 15 years, a quiet man who took pride in keeping the historic building's infrastructure running smoothly. His colleagues knew him as reliable and discreet, qualities that made him invaluable in a place where privacy was paramount. On this particular morning, he was responding to reports of electrical issues in the basement office complex beneath the East Wing, an area primarily used by junior staff and visiting dignitaries. The basement office that would soon become the center of a royal scandal belonged to William Hartwell, a mid-level communications advisor who had joined the palace staff 18 months earlier. Hartwell's office was unremarkable in most respects, furnished with standard government-issue furniture and the usual array of computers and filing cabinets. What made it extraordinary was what Thomas discovered hidden behind the false ceiling panels. As Thomas investigated the flickering lights that had been reported by security, he noticed something unusual about the ceiling tiles above Hartwell's desk. One panel seemed slightly askew, creating an almost imperceptible shadow that caught his experienced eye. When he climbed his ladder to investigate, what he found made his blood run cold. Nestled among the electrical conduits and ventilation ducts was a sophisticated surveillance system that clearly didn't belong to the palace's official security apparatus. The discovery included 3 high-definition cameras positioned to capture every angle of the office, advanced recording equipment with massive storage capacity, and transmission devices that could relay footage in real time to external locations. The equipment was professional grade, far beyond what any individual could reasonably afford or install without significant technical expertise. Serial numbers had been carefully removed, and the installation showed signs of meticulous planning and execution. Thomas immediately contacted his supervisor, Margaret Chen, who had overseen palace maintenance for over 2 decades. Margaret's reaction was swift and decisive. She ordered the office sealed immediately and placed a call directly to the palace security chief, Commander David Reynolds. Reynolds, a former Metropolitan Police detective with 30 years of experience, understood instantly that this discovery could have far-reaching implications for royal security and privacy. Within an hour, the basement office was crawling with security personnel and technical experts. The palace's head of communications, Sarah Pemberton, arrived shortly after, her usually composed demeanor showing cracks of concern. Pemberton had worked through numerous palace crises, from minor protocol breaches to major scandals, but the discovery of unauthorized surveillance equipment presented unprecedented challenges. The initial technical analysis revealed the sophistication of the surveillance operation. The cameras were motion-activated and had been recording continuously for at least 6 months, possibly longer. The storage capacity suggested that hundreds of hours of footage had been captured, potentially including sensitive conversations, confidential documents, and private moments of palace staff and visitors. The transmission equipment indicated that this footage might have been shared with unknown parties outside the palace walls. William Hartwell was located within 2 hours of the discovery. He was found at his London flat in Pimlico, apparently preparing for a normal day at work. When security personnel arrived at his door, his reaction was telling. Rather than expressing surprise or confusion, Hartwell immediately asked if they were there about the equipment. His question confirmed suspicions that he was not merely an innocent victim of surveillance, but potentially a key player in the operation. The interrogation of Hartwell began immediately in a secure room within the palace. Commander Reynolds conducted the initial questioning, with Pemberton observing and taking notes. Hartwell's responses were carefully measured, suggesting legal preparation or training. He admitted knowledge of the cameras but claimed he was being blackmailed into allowing their installation. When pressed for details about his alleged blackmailers, his story began to show inconsistencies and gaps that raised further suspicions. As news of the discovery began to circulate among senior palace staff, the implications became increasingly clear. The basement office was not an isolated workspace, but a hub of activity that regularly hosted meetings with various departments. Visitors to Hartwell's office over the past months had included junior members of the royal family staff, government liaisons, media contacts, and foreign dignitaries. The potential for compromised information was staggering. The palace's legal team, led by Queen's Counsel Amanda Morrison, was briefed on the situation by early afternoon. Morrison's assessment was grim but clear. The discovery constituted a potential breach of national security, violation of privacy laws, and possible espionage. The legal implications alone could result in criminal charges, civil litigation, and parliamentary inquiry. The political ramifications could be even more severe, potentially affecting relationships with allied nations and undermining public trust in the monarchy's ability to protect sensitive information. By evening, word of the discovery had reached the highest levels of palace administration. The Queen's private secretary, Sir James Weatherby, convened an emergency meeting of the Inner Circle of Advisors. The group included representatives from security, legal, communications, and protocol departments. The discussion was intense and sometimes heated, as officials grappled with questions that had no easy answers. How long had the surveillance been active? What information had been compromised? Who was behind the operation? How should the palace respond publicly? The investigation expanded rapidly as technical experts worked to trace the equipment's origins and follow digital trails that might lead to the ultimate perpetrators. Initial findings suggested professional installation and high-quality components that pointed to either state-sponsored activity or well-funded private interests. The sophistication of the operation ruled out amateur efforts or simple corporate espionage, raising the specter of foreign intelligence services or domestic extremist groups. Meanwhile, Hartwell remained in custody, his story evolving as investigators presented him with mounting evidence. He now claimed that he had been approached months earlier by individuals who claimed to represent a private security firm conducting routine assessments of palace security. According to his latest account, he had been told that his cooperation was essential for identifying vulnerabilities that could be exploited by hostile actors. The story was plausible enough to warrant investigation but contained enough inconsistencies to maintain suspicion about his true role. The palace communications team faced an impossible task: how to manage public disclosure of a security breach that could undermine confidence in the institution, while ensuring that ongoing investigations were not compromised. Early drafts of press statements were written and rewritten as officials struggled to find language that would acknowledge the seriousness of the situation without providing details that could assist other potential surveillance operations. As the first day of the crisis drew to a close, palace officials were acutely aware that they were racing against time. Experience had taught them that secrets of this magnitude rarely stayed contained for long, especially when they involved multiple departments and external agencies. The Metropolitan Police Counterintelligence Unit had been briefed and was preparing to take over significant portions of the investigation. MI5 had been notified and was conducting preliminary assessments of national security implications. The basement office where it all began remained sealed and guarded, its contents now evidence in what was shaping up to be one of the most significant security breaches in recent palace history. The cameras that had silently watched and recorded for months had been silenced, but the damage they might have caused was only beginning to be understood. The question that haunted everyone involved was simple yet terrifying. What secrets had been captured, and where had they gone? Thomas Mitchell, the maintenance worker whose keen eye had uncovered the surveillance operation, found himself at the center of a storm he never could have imagined. His routine morning inspection had set in motion events that would challenge the monarchy's reputation, test its security protocols, and ultimately force a reckoning with the reality that even the most protected institutions were vulnerable to sophisticated surveillance operations. The discovery in the basement office represented more than just a security breach. It was a stark reminder that in an age of advancing technology and evolving threats, traditional approaches to protecting sensitive information and maintaining institutional privacy were increasingly inadequate. The palace would need to adapt quickly to address not only the immediate crisis, but also the broader vulnerabilities that the incident had exposed. As night fell over London, palace officials knew that the morning would bring new challenges, difficult decisions, and potentially devastating revelations. The basement trial, as it would come to be known, had only just begun. The cameras were silent now, but their months of secret recording had created a digital time bomb that threatened to explode the careful balance of privacy, security, and transparency that the modern monarchy struggled to maintain. The investigation would ultimately reveal truths that no one was prepared for. challenge assumptions about loyalty and trust within the palace walls, and force a complete reassessment of how Britain's most important institution protected itself in an increasingly connected and surveilled world. The basement office that William Hartwell had occupied would never again seem like just another workspace, but rather a symbol of vulnerability in the heart of one of the world's most secure locations. The second day of the crisis began before dawn as Palace Security Chief Commander David Reynolds arrived to find the investigation had expanded overnight into a full-scale operation involving multiple government agencies. The Metropolitan Police Counterintelligence Unit had established a command center in the palace's secure conference room, while MI5 officers worked alongside palace security to piece together the scope of the surveillance operation. Detective Chief Inspector Helen Morrison, no relation to the palace's legal counsel despite sharing a surname, led the police investigation with methodical precision. Her 25 years of experience in counterintelligence had prepared her for complex cases, but the sensitivity of this particular investigation presented unique challenges. Every decision had to balance the need for thorough investigation with the requirement to protect ongoing palace operations and maintain public confidence in the monarchy. The technical analysis of the surveillance equipment revealed disturbing details about its capabilities and deployment. Forensic examination showed that the cameras had been installed in 3 phases over a 6-month period, suggesting careful planning and multiple unauthorized entries into the basement office. The equipment included not only recording devices, but also sophisticated audio capture systems capable of detecting conversations from adjacent rooms through wall vibrations. William Hartwell's continued interrogation provided a slowly emerging picture of his recruitment and involvement. Under intense questioning, he revealed that his initial contact had come through what appeared to be a legitimate security consulting firm called Meridian Risk Assessment. The company's website and credentials appeared authentic, and their initial approach had seemed professional and authorized. Hartwell claimed he had genuinely believed he was participating in an official security review sanctioned by palace administration. However, investigators quickly discovered that Meridian Risk Assessment was a sophisticated front operation. The company's business registration led to a maze of shell corporations and overseas entities that obscured its true ownership and funding sources. The registered address in central London turned out to be a virtual office with no permanent staff, and the phone numbers led to automated systems that provided no real information about the organization's activities. The investigation into Hartwell's background revealed concerning gaps and inconsistencies in his employment history. His previous position at a government relations firm had ended abruptly 18 months earlier, shortly before his application to join the palace staff. Colleagues from his previous workplace described him as competent but increasingly secretive in his final months of employment. Financial records showed unexplained income that coincided with his move to the palace position, raising questions about whether he had been recruited specifically to facilitate the surveillance operation. Palace Communications Director Sarah Pemberton faced mounting pressure as rumors of the security breach began circulating in media circles. Despite the palace's attempts to maintain secrecy, the presence of police vehicles and increased security activity had been noticed by journalists and photographers who regularly monitored palace activities. Pemberton worked frantically to prepare contingency statements, while hoping that official disclosure could be delayed until investigators had a clearer understanding of the situation's scope. The examination of recorded footage proved to be both revealing and deeply troubling. Initial reviews showed that the cameras had captured sensitive conversations involving multiple government departments, foreign diplomatic representatives, and senior palace staff members. The recordings included discussions of upcoming royal engagements, security protocols, personal family matters, and confidential communications with government ministers. The potential for blackmail, embarrassment, and compromise of national interests was immediately apparent to all involved. One particularly concerning discovery was that the surveillance system had recorded a private meeting between a junior member of the royal family and their personal attorney discussing sensitive legal matters. The recording violated attorney-client privilege and potentially compromised ongoing legal proceedings. The implications extended beyond mere privacy violations to fundamental questions about the security of legal communications within palace walls. As the investigation expanded, other staff members who had worked in or visited the basement office were interviewed. Several recalled noticing Hartwell's odd behavior in recent months, including his tendency to schedule meetings at unusual times and his apparent nervousness when certain visitors arrived. Some staff members reported that Hartwell had shown excessive interest in meeting schedules and visitor lists, often requesting information that seemed outside his normal responsibilities. The search of Hartwell's personal residence yielded additional evidence of his involvement in the surveillance operation. Hidden in his study, investigators found encrypted communication devices, substantial amounts of cash in various currencies, and detailed floor plans of palace basement levels that showed areas far beyond his normal work assignments. Personal correspondence revealed contact with individuals using obvious pseudonyms and reference to payments for consultation services that appeared to correlate with the timeline of the surveillance installation. More disturbing was the discovery of backup storage devices containing duplicate copies of the surveillance footage. The existence of these backups suggested that the recorded material had value beyond simple intelligence gathering and might have been intended for distribution or sale to interested parties. The quality and organization of the archived material indicated professional-level preparation for potential blackmail or extortion operations. The forensic analysis of digital communications revealed a sophisticated network of encrypted messaging systems and anonymous communication channels. Hartwell had been using multiple identities across various platforms to communicate with his handlers, who appeared to be operating from different international locations. The complexity of the communication network suggested involvement by professional intelligence services or well-funded criminal organizations with significant technical resources. Palace legal counsel Amanda Morrison worked around the clock to assess the legal implications of the surveillance breach. Her preliminary analysis identified potential violations of numerous laws, including the Data Protection Act, the Computer Misuse Act, and various national security statutes. The international implications were equally complex, as some of the recorded material involved foreign diplomats and government representatives whose communications might be protected under international law. The security review expanded beyond the basement office, as investigators realized that if one area had been compromised, others might be at risk as well. A comprehensive sweep of the entire palace complex was ordered, involving specialized equipment capable of detecting even the most sophisticated surveillance devices. The process was methodical but time-consuming, requiring examination of every room, corridor, and service area within the massive complex. During the broader security sweep, investigators discovered additional anomalies that heightened concerns about the scope of the surveillance operation. Several other offices showed signs of recent unauthorized access, including scratched locks, displaced furniture, and altered ceiling tiles. While no additional recording equipment was found, the evidence suggested that the basement office might have been part of a larger reconnaissance operation that had mapped multiple potential surveillance targets. The psychological profile of William Hartwell began to emerge as investigators delved deeper into his background and motivations. Interviews with former colleagues and friends revealed a man who had become increasingly isolated and financially stressed in the months before joining the palace staff. His gambling debts and expensive lifestyle appeared to exceed his legitimate income, creating vulnerabilities that could have been exploited by those seeking to recruit him as an intelligence asset. Commander Reynolds coordinated with international law enforcement agencies as the investigation revealed potential connections to foreign intelligence services. The sophistication of the operation, the quality of the equipment, and the professional nature of the recruitment and handling suggested state-sponsored activity rather than simple criminal enterprise. Initial intelligence sharing with allied nations indicated similar operations might be underway at other government facilities across Europe and North America. The media pressure continued to intensify as investigative journalists began pursuing leads about unusual activity at the palace. Several news organizations had received anonymous tips about security concerns, though the sources of these tips remained unknown. The timing and nature of the media inquiries suggested that whoever was behind the surveillance operation might also be orchestrating public disclosure for maximum impact and embarrassment. Behind closed doors, senior palace officials grappled with the political implications of the security breach. The potential for public embarrassment was severe, but more concerning was the possibility that sensitive information about royal family members, government operations, or international relations had been compromised. The damage assessment would require weeks of careful review and coordination with multiple government departments. The investigation revealed that Hartwell had been systematically documenting the schedules, habits, and security protocols of numerous palace staff members. His computer contained detailed profiles of colleagues, visitors, and even family members of palace employees. The comprehensive nature of this intelligence gathering suggested preparation for operations far beyond simple surveillance, possibly including recruitment of additional assets or planning for more serious security breaches. As the second day of the crisis concluded, investigators had assembled a clearer picture of a sophisticated long-term surveillance operation that had successfully penetrated one of Britain's most secure institutions. The involvement of professional intelligence services seemed increasingly certain, though their specific identity and ultimate objectives remained unclear. The palace faced not only an immediate security crisis but also a fundamental challenge to its reputation and ability to protect sensitive information. The basement office that had triggered the investigation now stood as a symbol of vulnerability in the heart of the monarchy. The cameras that had watched silently for months had been removed, but the damage they had caused would take much longer to assess and address. The investigation was far from over, and the most difficult revelations were yet to come. The third day brought devastating revelations as digital forensics experts completed their analysis of the surveillance system's data streams and discovered that the palace breach was part of a much larger international intelligence operation. The encrypted communications recovered from William Hartwell's devices had been partially decoded, revealing connections to similar surveillance operations targeting government facilities in at least 6 other countries. Detective Chief Inspector Helen Morrison briefed palace officials on the expanding scope of the investigation during an emergency session held in the secure briefing room. The evidence suggested a coordinated campaign by a foreign intelligence service, likely operating under the code name Operation Basement, which had specifically targeted constitutional monarchies and democratic institutions across Western Europe and the Commonwealth nations. The revelation that this was not an isolated incident but part of a broader international conspiracy sent shockwaves through the palace hierarchy. Sir James Weatherby, the Queen's private secretary, immediately contacted his counterparts in other affected nations to coordinate responses and share intelligence. The diplomatic implications were staggering as the surveillance operation potentially compromised ongoing international negotiations and bilateral relationships. Forensic analysis of the captured surveillance footage revealed the true extent of the intelligence gathering that had taken place. The recordings included not just routine office activities but also sensitive discussions about upcoming state visits, private family conversations involving junior royals, confidential briefings with government ministers, and strategic discussions about the monarchy's response to various political developments. The material represented a treasure trove of sensitive information that could be used for political manipulation, blackmail, or strategic advantage by hostile foreign powers. One particularly damaging discovery was footage of a private conversation between the Queen's deputy private secretary and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, discussing confidential economic policies that would not be announced publicly for several weeks. The early knowledge of these policies could have provided significant advantages in financial markets and political negotiations. The conversation had taken place during a routine meeting that neither participant could have imagined was being recorded by hostile intelligence services. The investigation into Hartwell's recruitment revealed a sophisticated operation that had begun more than 2 years earlier, well before his application to join the palace staff. Intelligence services had apparently identified him as a potential asset during his previous employment, and had carefully cultivated the relationship through a series of seemingly innocent contacts and gradually increasing financial incentives. The recruitment process showed hallmarks of professional intelligence tradecraft that pointed to state-sponsored activities. Further analysis of Hartwell's communications revealed that he had been in contact with handlers operating under multiple identities across different countries. The communication patterns suggested a cell-based structure designed to protect the broader operation if any individual component was discovered. Hartwell appeared to have been just one of many assets deployed in what investigators now understood to be a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation targeting Western democratic institutions. The palace security team, working with MI5 and international partners, began mapping the full extent of the intelligence network. Similar surveillance operations had been discovered at government buildings in Australia, Canada, and several European Union member states. The coordinated nature of these operations and their sophisticated technical execution left no doubt that they were sponsored and directed by a major foreign intelligence service. with significant resources and expertise. Command Reynolds coordinated with the Joint Intelligence Committee to assess the national security implications of the compromised information. The preliminary assessment indicated that while no immediate threats to physical security had been identified, the potential for long-term strategic disadvantage was substantial. The compromised information could be used to anticipate British policy positions in international negotiations, undermine diplomatic relationships, and manipulate domestic political developments. The forensic examination of the surveillance equipment revealed sophisticated features that had not been immediately apparent during the initial discovery. The cameras included facial recognition capabilities that could automatically identify and track specific individuals as they moved through the monitored area. The system had been programmed to prioritize recording when certain high-value targets were present, suggesting detailed advance intelligence about palace personnel and visitors. More disturbing was the discovery that the surveillance system included capabilities for real-time data transmission to multiple external locations simultaneously. This meant that sensitive conversations and activities had potentially been monitored in real time by intelligence analysts operating from locations around the world. The implications for operational security and the protection of sensitive information were profound and deeply concerning to security officials. The investigation expanded to examine how the surveillance equipment had been introduced into the palace complex without detection by existing security systems. The analysis revealed sophisticated knowledge of palace security protocols, delivery schedules, and maintenance routines. The perpetrators had apparently studied the facility's operations for an extended period before attempting to install the surveillance equipment, suggesting extensive preliminary reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Palace Communications Director Sarah Pemberton faced an impossible situation as media pressure continued to intensify. Investigative journalists had begun connecting various pieces of information and were close to breaking the story publicly. Several major news organizations had submitted formal requests for comment about alleged security incidents at the palace, using language that suggested they had received detailed briefings from knowledgeable sources. The legal implications of the surveillance operation continued to expand as investigators discovered evidence of additional privacy violations and potential criminal activities. The recorded material included privileged communications between lawyers and clients, confidential medical information about royal family members, and personal financial details that had been captured during private conversations. Each category of compromised information presented distinct legal challenges and potential liability issues. International law enforcement cooperation revealed that the intelligence operation had been active for at least 3 years, with successful penetrations of multiple high-security facilities across several countries. The scale and sophistication of the operation suggested involvement by a major nation-state, with substantial intelligence capabilities and strategic interests in undermining Western democratic institutions. The investigation into Hartwell's financial arrangements revealed a complex web of payments and incentives that had sustained his cooperation over an extended period. Bank records showed regular payments from multiple offshore accounts, expensive gifts that had been carefully structured to avoid detection, and gradually increasing financial rewards that corresponded to his ability to provide access to more sensitive information and facilities. Security experts reviewing the compromised footage identified several instances where the surveillance had captured information that could compromise ongoing security operations and personnel protection details. The recordings included discussions of security protocols, personnel assignments, and vulnerability assessments that could be used by hostile actors to plan attacks or other harmful activities against royal family members and palace facilities. The psychological analysis of Hartwell revealed an individual who had been systematically manipulated and exploited over an extended period. His handlers had apparently used a combination of financial incentives, ideological appeals, and personal blackmail to maintain his cooperation. The sophistication of the manipulation suggested professional training in human intelligence operations and asset management. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that the surveillance operation had been designed not just to gather intelligence but also to position assets for potential future operations. Hartwell had been instructed to develop relationships with key personnel, map internal communications networks, and identify additional recruitment targets among palace staff members. The long-term nature of the operation suggested strategic planning that extended far beyond simple intelligence gathering. The international coordination required to execute such a comprehensive surveillance operation indicated involvement by a foreign intelligence service with global reach and sophisticated capabilities. The technical expertise, financial resources, and operational coordination required ruled out non-state actors and pointed to a major power with strategic interests in compromising Western institutions. Palace officials realized that they were dealing with more than a simple security breach, but rather a deliberate attack on the institution of the monarchy and its ability to function effectively in support of British national interests. The implications extended beyond privacy violations to fundamental questions about the security of democratic institutions in an era of sophisticated intelligence operations and technological surveillance capabilities. The basement office where the surveillance equipment had been discovered now represented something far more sinister than initially understood. It had served as the nerve center for an international intelligence operation that had successfully penetrated one of Britain's most secure institutions and compromised sensitive information about the monarchy, government operations, and national security matters. As the third day of the crisis concluded, palace officials understood that they were facing challenges that went far beyond managing a public relations crisis or addressing security vulnerabilities. They were confronting evidence of a sophisticated attack on British sovereignty and democratic institutions that would require unprecedented cooperation between law enforcement, intelligence services, and international allies to fully address and counter. The fourth day of the crisis brought a breakthrough that would transform the investigation from a security incident into a matter of international espionage, with implications reaching the highest levels of government. MI5's cryptography team, working around the clock, had successfully broken the encryption on several key communications recovered from Hartwell's devices, revealing the true identity of the Foreign Intelligence Service behind Operation Basement and its ultimate strategic objectives. The decoded messages revealed that the surveillance operation was directed by Section 7 of a foreign intelligence service that had been tasked with a comprehensive program to undermine public confidence in Western democratic institutions. The palace surveillance was part of a broader campaign that included similar operations targeting the German Chancellor's office, the Canadian Parliament, and the Swedish Royal Palace. The coordinated nature of these operations indicated a long-term strategic initiative rather than opportunistic intelligence gathering. Dame Patricia Thornberry, the Director General of MI5, personally briefed the Prime Minister on the findings in a secure facility in Whitehall. The intelligence revealed that the foreign operation, codenamed Democratic Fracture, aimed to collect compromising information about Western leaders and institutions that could be used to manipulate political processes, undermine public trust, and create strategic advantages in international negotiations. The sophistication and scope of the operation represented one of the most serious intelligence threats to British national security in decades. The breakthrough in decryption also revealed the existence of additional assets within the British government and other Western institutions who had not yet been discovered. The communications referenced at least 12 other individuals who had been recruited to provide intelligence or facilitate surveillance operations. The identification and location of these additional assets became an immediate priority for MI5 and international intelligence partners. William Hartwell's role in the broader operation became clearer as investigators pieced together his communications with handlers and coordinators across multiple countries. He had not been simply a passive surveillance facilitator, but an active intelligence operative who had been tasked with identifying additional recruitment targets, mapping internal palace communications networks, and preparing groundwork for expanded operations. His position had provided access not just to physical spaces, but to personnel records, security protocols, and strategic planning documents. The forensic analysis of the surveillance footage took on new significance, as investigators realized they were examining material that had been systematically analyzed by professional intelligence officers for strategic and tactical intelligence. The recordings had been processed through automated systems that identified key individuals, extracted sensitive information, and flagged material that could be used for blackmail or political manipulation. The level of analysis applied to the captured material indicated substantial investment in the operation's intelligence yield. Palace Security Chief Commander Reynolds worked with international counterparts to assess the global implications of the intelligence breach. Similar surveillance operations had been active in at least 8 countries, with some having operated undetected for more than 4 years. The coordinated timing of their discovery suggested that the Foreign Intelligence Service might have decided to activate the compromised information for immediate strategic purposes rather than continuing long-term intelligence gathering. The investigation revealed that the palace surveillance had captured information about upcoming state visits that could compromise the security of visiting dignitaries and disrupt important diplomatic negotiations. Conversations about security arrangements, protocol details, and sensitive political discussions had all been recorded and transmitted to foreign intelligence services. The implications for international relations and diplomatic security required immediate coordination with multiple governments and security services. Advanced analysis of the technical infrastructure revealed that the surveillance operation had included capabilities for active intelligence gathering beyond passive recording. The system could intercept and monitor electronic communications, access computer networks, and even manipulate digital information systems within the monitored areas. The discovery of these active capabilities elevated the security breach to an even more serious level of national security threat. The psychological operation aspects of the broader campaign became apparent as investigators analyzed the strategic objectives outlined in the decoded communications. The Foreign Intelligence Service had not been primarily interested in traditional military or economic intelligence, but rather in information that could be used to undermine public confidence in democratic institutions, create political instability, and manipulate electoral processes in target countries. Palace Communications Director Sarah Pemberton received authorization to begin preparing public disclosure statements, as it became clear that the investigation's findings would need to be shared with Parliament and the public. The challenge was crafting language that would acknowledge the seriousness of the security breach while protecting ongoing operations to identify and neutralize other assets within the intelligence network. The political implications of public disclosure were substantial, as they would likely affect international relations and domestic political stability. The legal framework for responding to the intelligence operation required coordination between multiple government departments and international law enforcement agencies. The Attorney General's office began preparing criminal charges that would address not only the surveillance activities, but also the broader conspiracy to compromise national security. The complexity of the legal case was unprecedented, involving violations of numerous domestic laws and international agreements. Financial investigations revealed the sophisticated funding mechanisms that had supported the multi-year intelligence operation. Money had flowed through a complex network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and cryptocurrency transactions designed to obscure the funding sources and avoid detection by financial intelligence services. The scale of funding indicated substantial state resources and long-term commitment to the operation's objectives. Intelligence sharing with allied nations revealed that several other countries had discovered similar surveillance operations in recent weeks, suggesting a coordinated activation of assets across multiple targets simultaneously. The timing coincided with several important international negotiations, and suggested that the compromised information might be intended to provide strategic advantages in diplomatic and economic discussions. The investigation into additional palace staff members identified several individuals who had been subjected to recruitment approaches similar to those used with Hartwell. These approaches had included financial offers, ideological appeals, and in some cases, blackmail based on compromising information obtained through previous intelligence operations. The systematic nature of the recruitment efforts indicated comprehensive planning and substantial resources. Technical experts discovered that the surveillance equipment installed in the basement office had been part of a modular system designed for expansion to additional locations within the palace complex. Plans recovered from Hartwell's communications showed intended installation sites that would have provided comprehensive coverage of critical palace operations, including private family areas and secure communications facilities. The counterintelligence implications of the discovery extended beyond immediate security concerns to questions about how such a sophisticated operation had successfully penetrated British security systems. The investigation revealed vulnerabilities in personnel vetting processes, facility security protocols, and counterintelligence monitoring that would require comprehensive reforms to address effectively. International cooperation in the investigation revealed that the Foreign Intelligence Service had developed specialized techniques for recruiting assets within high-security institutions. The recruitment process typically began with financial pressure or personal vulnerability, progressed through gradual compromise and increasing demands, and culminated in systematic intelligence collection and facility penetration. The sophistication of the process indicated extensive research and professional training in human intelligence operations. The analysis of compromised information revealed that the intelligence operation had successfully obtained advanced knowledge of several significant government policy decisions that had not yet been announced publicly. This information could have been used for economic manipulation, political influence operations, or strategic planning that would disadvantage British interests in international relations and negotiations. As the fourth day concluded, the investigation had evolved from a palace security incident into recognition of a sophisticated international intelligence operation that threatened not just the monarchy, but the broader fabric of British democratic institutions. The basement office where it all began now stood as evidence of vulnerabilities that extended far beyond physical security to fundamental questions about protecting democratic institutions in an era of sophisticated state-sponsored intelligence operations. The implications of the discoveries were still being assessed, but it was clear that the investigation would require unprecedented cooperation between law enforcement, intelligence services, and international allies to fully understand and counter the threats that had been revealed. The basement trial was becoming a test not just of palace security, but of Western democratic institutions' ability to protect themselves against sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. The fifth day marked a turning point as the investigation revealed the ultimate scope of the international intelligence operation, and the palace prepared for public disclosure that would shock the nation and redefine how Britain approached counterintelligence and national security. The overnight analysis had uncovered evidence that the foreign intelligence operation had been even more successful than initially feared, penetrating not just the palace but multiple levels of British government and society. Prime Minister Catherine Hartwell, no relation to the compromised palace employee despite sharing a surname, convened an emergency meeting of the National Security Council as the full implications of Operation Basement became clear. The intelligence briefing she received painted a picture of systematic infiltration of British institutions that had been ongoing for nearly a decade, with the palace surveillance representing only the most recently discovered component of a comprehensive espionage network. The decoded communications revealed that the Foreign Intelligence Service had successfully placed assets within the Cabinet Office, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and several major financial institutions. The palace operation had been designed as a central hub for coordinating intelligence gathering across these various penetrations, with William Hartwell serving as a key node in a network that extended throughout the British establishment. Dame Patricia Thornberry presented evidence that the intelligence operation had influenced several major policy decisions over the past 3 years through the strategic use of compromised information and manipulated intelligence assessments. The implications were staggering, as they suggested that British foreign policy, economic strategy, and even domestic political developments had been shaped by foreign intelligence influence operations that had operated undetected for years. The investigation team, now expanded to include representatives from multiple government departments and international intelligence services, had identified a pattern of recruitment and operation that extended across Western democratic nations. The Foreign Intelligence Service had developed a comprehensive program for identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities within democratic institutions, using a combination of traditional human intelligence techniques and sophisticated technological capabilities. William Hartwell's full debriefing, conducted over several intensive sessions, revealed the extraordinary extent of his activities and the intelligence he had provided to his foreign handlers. Beyond the surveillance equipment in his office, he had systematically photographed classified documents, recorded private conversations using concealed devices, and provided detailed intelligence about palace security procedures, personnel backgrounds, and operational planning. The forensic analysis of the surveillance footage had been completed, revealing that the cameras had captured over 400 hours of sensitive conversations and activities during their months of operation. The material included discussions of state secrets, personal information about royal family members, details of upcoming security operations, and strategic planning discussions that could compromise British interests for years to come. The intelligence value of the captured material was estimated to be equivalent to that gained through years of conventional espionage operations. International cooperation in the investigation revealed that the palace surveillance was part of a coordinated operation that had simultaneously targeted constitutional monarchies across Europe and the Commonwealth. Similar surveillance operations had been discovered at royal residences and government facilities in Sweden, Norway, the Netherlands, Canada, and Australia. The coordinated timing and methodology indicated centralized planning and execution by a professional intelligence organization with global capabilities. The technical analysis of the surveillance system revealed capabilities that went far beyond simple recording. The equipment had included advanced artificial intelligence systems that could automatically identify and classify conversations by topic and sensitivity level, facial recognition capabilities that could track specific individuals throughout the facility, and real-time analysis tools that could immediately flag information of particular intelligence value. The sophistication of the system indicated substantial technical investment and professional development. Palace legal counsel Amanda Morrison worked with the Crown Prosecution Service to prepare criminal charges that would address the full scope of the espionage operation. The charges would include violations of the Official Secrets Act, conspiracy to commit espionage, computer misuse offenses, and numerous privacy violations. The complexity of the case was unprecedented, involving evidence from multiple countries and requiring coordination with international law enforcement agencies. The security review prompted by the investigation had revealed additional vulnerabilities throughout the palace complex and other government facilities. The comprehensive assessment identified dozens of locations where similar surveillance operations could have been conducted, gaps in security protocols that could be exploited by hostile intelligence services, and personnel vetting procedures that had failed to detect the recruitment of assets like Hartwell. Commander Reynolds coordinated with international security experts to develop new counterintelligence protocols designed to detect and prevent similar operations in the future. The new procedures included enhanced background investigations, continuous monitoring systems, and regular security sweeps using advanced detection equipment. The implementation of these measures would require substantial investment and ongoing vigilance to maintain their effectiveness. The investigation revealed that the Foreign Intelligence Service had maintained detailed psychological profiles of potential recruitment targets within British institutions, including comprehensive assessments of financial vulnerabilities, personal relationships, political beliefs, and career ambitions. The sophistication of these profiles indicated extensive preliminary intelligence gathering and professional assessment capabilities that could be applied to recruitment operations across multiple targets. Media pressure reached a crescendo as investigative journalists compiled evidence from multiple sources about the security breach and its implications. Several major news organizations had prepared detailed exposés based on leaked information, anonymous sources, and independent investigation. The Palace communications team realized that controlled disclosure would be preferable to uncontrolled media speculation and potentially inaccurate reporting. The diplomatic implications of the intelligence operation required careful management to avoid undermining relationships with allied nations that had also been targeted. Foreign ministries across Western Europe and the Commonwealth were coordinating their responses to minimize the political impact while ensuring that security vulnerabilities were addressed. The scandal threatened to complicate ongoing international negotiations and diplomatic initiatives. Financial investigators had traced the funding for the intelligence operation to sources that clearly indicated state sponsorship by a major foreign power. The complex network of financial transfers, shell companies, and cryptocurrency transactions had been designed to obscure the funding sources, but advanced forensic techniques had successfully identified the ultimate origins of the money used to support the operation. The psychological impact on Palace staff had been substantial, as employees grappled with the knowledge that their private conversations and activities had been monitored by hostile intelligence services for months. Counseling services were made available to affected staff members, and security briefings were conducted to help personnel understand how to protect themselves and their colleagues from future intelligence operations. The investigation into additional assets within the intelligence network had identified several other individuals who had been recruited or approached by the same foreign intelligence service. These discoveries led to a broader counterintelligence operation designed to map the full extent of the penetration and neutralize ongoing threats to national security. Sir James Weatherby, working with the Prime Minister's office, prepared for the unprecedented step of public disclosure about a major intelligence operation that had successfully penetrated the heart of the British establishment. The statement would need to balance transparency about the threats that had been discovered with protection of ongoing operations and sensitive intelligence sources and methods. The long-term implications of the intelligence operation extended beyond immediate security concerns to fundamental questions about the vulnerability of democratic institutions to sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. The success of Operation Basement demonstrated that even the most secure facilities and trusted personnel could be compromised through patient, professional intelligence operations backed by substantial resources and expertise. As preparations began for the public announcement that would reveal the basement trial to the nation, palace officials reflected on how a routine maintenance inspection had uncovered one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations ever discovered on British soil. The basement office where Thomas Mitchell had found the hidden cameras would be remembered as the starting point for revelations that transformed understanding of modern intelligence threats and the vulnerability of democratic institutions. The investigation had revealed uncomfortable truths about the effectiveness of foreign intelligence operations against Western targets and the need for enhanced counterintelligence capabilities to protect democratic institutions. The basement trial would ultimately lead to fundamental reforms in security procedures, intelligence sharing protocols, and international cooperation designed to counter sophisticated state-sponsored espionage operations. The story that began with flickering lights in a basement office had evolved into a comprehensive examination of how foreign intelligence services threatened the foundations of democratic society and the institutions that supported it. The palace, the government, and allied nations would need to adapt their approaches to security and counterintelligence to address the sophisticated threats that the investigation had revealed.